Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto fell in love with Ino and build harem with Ino, Kurotsuchi and Haku, part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Team 7 walked home feeling successful. Kakashi was beaming at his students and was feeling quite happy with himself. He couldn't help but smile at the fact that his 3 students were all prodigies. Not only that, but both Naruto and Sasuke had powerful dojutsu unlocked, making his team a team of powerhouses. Sakura, as seen from what Haku had taught her during 1-week reprise in Wave, has a talent in medical ninjutsu. They were making good time the village since they didn't have to walk home. Without a civilian with them, they could tree hop all the way back to Konoha. They had left just 2 hours prior and they could already see the village walls. During this time, the team members were conversing with one another. Each one was equally excited for training. Surprisingly, Sakura more than the other 2 since she was going to be learning medical ninjutsu from the hospital. So, Naruto, what happened to Ino-chan? Sasuke teased for the umpteenth time since they left the Great Uzumaki Namikaze Bridge. Nothing happened. Naruto replied. Really? Sakura piped. Because from what I remember seeing was, you and a beautiful ice mistress lip-locking on the bridge. Gah, leave me alone. Naruto shouted and picked up speed, leaving a laughing Sasuke and Sakura behind him. So, Naruto, what's this I hear about you leaving Ino for Haku? Kakashi asked. Oh come on. Not you too. Naruto growled and shot his tails out to use his vines to get away from his team. A few minutes later, the team landed at the south gate of Konoha. Already waiting was Kotetsu and Izumo doing their guard duties as usual. The 2 of them gave nods to Team 7, still happy with the way they handled the Tora mission. Even though Naruto didn't think much about it, he was labeled as a legend amongst shinobi already because of the fact that he was able to impress the daimyo's wife and catch Tora without having the cat try to kill him. Without those tales, it wouldn't be possible. Team 7 was on their way to the Hokage Tower for mission debrief. Naruto was still shirtless and was picking his nose while Sasuke and Sakura were talking about pointless things. Kakashi though was thinking about more important subjects. Like the fact that Naruto has the Kazemi and the fact that his grandfather is the only person alive that could help him. And he also wanted Naruto to get in a good word with the old man. Kakashi wanted a free copy of Jiraiya's newest addition to the series After All Yano. Naruto didn't know it yet, but his grandfather was the author of the greatest book series in the history of book series. And the fact that his grandfather was a Sannin was a good trait to boot. Team 7 entered the Hokage's office expecting a normal day of mission debriefs, but when they entered the office, they came to see a tall white-haired man with a large scroll on his back, talking to the Hokage. Hokage-sama, Kakashi said with a deep bow. We are ready to give you our mission report. That can wait, Kakashi, Hiruzen said with a raised hand. Sasuke, Sakura, you 2 are dismissed for now. I need to discuss something with Naruto-kun and your sensei. Once the 2 genin left, the white-haired man turned around and almost instantly his jaw dropped. In front of him was a shirtless redhead with deep whisker marks and fox ears. His eyes were a mix of deep purple and cerulean. His pupils were slits instead of circles. Behind him were 9 fox tails wagging in anticipation. The kid looked up in the Jiraiya and tilted his head slightly. Why you? What the hell happened to you? Jiraiya screamed out and grabbed Naruto in for a tight back-breaking hug. Who the hell are you? Naruto asked while trying his hardest to break free from the deadly hug. Jiraiya relinquished his embrace and gave Naruto a sad smile. The man shut his eyes for a moment. Naruto sensed a small chakra spike. His jaw dropped when he saw the man's new eyes. The Kazemi, Naruto gasped. That means, I am the great Jiraiya Namikaze. The old man jumped onto the Hokage desk and broke out into a pose. Oh, and I just so happen to be the author of those books you have hidden in your backpack. Shit. How do you know? Naruto asked in surprise. I can sense a pervert when I see one. Jiraiya gave a big smile. Because I am the king of perverts. The super pervert. There was a moment of awkward silence as the white-haired grandfather waited for a fanfare of trumpets, or at least applause. Jiraiya sighed and hopped off of the desk and looked at Naruto. I also happen to be your grandfather. Sweet. Naruto smiled. But now explain why you look like this. Jiraiya said with a serious look on his face. I'm just curious if Kushina and Minato know about this. They do. Gigi. Naruto looked at Hiruzen. Can I have Inoichi-san get Ero Gigi into my mindscape? Naruto asked with his childlike innocence. Haha. Hiruzen laughed. That's the first time I've heard that. Anyway, I can. Come by here in around 4 in the afternoon, which gives you 4 hours of reprise since you just came back from a C-ranked mission. Naruto nodded his head and headed out of the tower in search of someone of high importance. He flash-stepped out of the building and reappeared at the Yamanaka flower shop. Looks like Ino is still working at this time. Sweet. Naruto opened the door and walked up to the counter with a bright smile on his face, completely forgetting that he didn't have a shirt on. Ino had her back turned, but when she swiveled around to face Naruto, her jaw dropped and she turned into a stuttering case of teenage girl syndrome. She couldn't keep her eyes off of Naruto's bare torso. Hi Naruto-kun. Ino followed every crease and every bulge in his chest and arms. She followed up and looked at his eyes. They had a lighter purple tint with small traces of cerulean showing from deep within, giving his eyes more depth than what they were before. The corners of her lips twitched up to form a smile. Hey there, pretty lady. Naruto smiled. I missed you. Did you now? Ino said, her entire face making a 180 turn around. Sakura and Sasuke came by here not too long ago to buy flowers or something, and they let it slip that you and Akunoichi were making out just before you left for Konoha. Ino had a stoic expression on her face, making it hard for Naruto to read her face. The only sign that Naruto had of the immediate danger was the fact that she was giving off massive amounts of killing intent. It was so great that his sensing abilities of Sage Mode were blinded and clogged. Haha. Naruto looked away, too afraid to make eye contact with the enraged blonde. Damn it. Those two ratted me out. Naruto was twitching slightly and looked at Ino with a nervous smile on his face. Ino raised her hand, instantly causing Naruto to cower in fear of what was to come. His heart was racing, especially since Ino hit harder than Sasuke does. Why are you flinching? Ino asked with an eyebrow raised. Naruto turned his head to see Ino pushing something out of the way. Naruto's eyes were wide with fear. Ka-chan. What do I do? Naruto asked. I'm taking a nap. Ask Kura-chan. Kushina's groggy voice replied, causing Naruto to sweat drop. Fine. Kura-ne. Naruto asked. What should I do? Challenge her to a spar or something. Kura replied before shutting off their connection. Geez. Both of them are so lazy. Naruto inwardly sighed and gave Ino a determined look. Alright, let's spar. Naruto said. Now you're talking. Ino chirped. That's how you apologize to a kunoichi. Let's go then. Naruto headed for the front door. Ka-chan. Tu-san. Me and Naru-kun are going to train. I'll be back in a few hours or so. At Training Ground 7, Naruto, I want you to know that I am a special case in my clan. Ino started as she walked 10 paces away from Naruto. Their teams and senseis were sitting about watching the spar take place. Jiraiya was sitting in a tree and smiled brightly when he heard the words leave Ino's lips. I have an elemental Kekkei Genkei. She suddenly sped through hand seals, making an unknown combination. Naruto sensed a chakra surge coming from Ino and was immediately able to realize what kind of Kekkei Genkei she had. Senjutsu chakra does wonderful things. Naruto was frozen with fear. Well, she uses Rantan. Naruto's eyes widened when Ino finished the hand seal pattern. Rantan. Reiza Sakasu. Suddenly a large blast of light shot out for Naruto from Ino's extended hands. The lasers swished around, nearly catching onto Naruto's more not-so-cautious tails in the initial blast. Naruto continued to dodge and weave in between each attack and sent a few blasts of wind at the girl, but Ino easily evaded the attacks and sped through a few more hand seals. Rantan. Ryazaru no Jutsu. Ino clapped her hands together and a large dragon made from supercharged lightning and lasers came to life and shot at the unsuspecting redhead. Naruto, on the other hand, was getting nervous. He knew about Rantan and the powerful effect of Rantan Jutsu. His clan was known for using them exclusively. But the whole Yamanaka using Rantan caught the young Uzumaki Namikaze off guard. The large dragon closed the distance and was ready to converge on Naruto's position. But Naruto surged his chakra, sending out a massive blast of red chakra, which cancelled out the jutsu, leaving a bubbling Naruto and a slightly peeved Ino. The blonde of the two went through a few more hand seals even though she knew that this was her limit. Rantan. Shushu go. The sky suddenly darkened above them, terrifying Naruto. The redhead was using the Kazemi to try and remove the storm, but nothing was working. The sky boomed with thunder, signifying that it was at its peak. Suddenly, instead of rain coming down in waves, it was instead a concentrated barrage of laser beams shooting from the sky towards Naruto. Oh shit! Naruto screamed and threw up the first hand seal that came to mind. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Almost 1,000 Naruto clones popped into existence and took the hits for Naruto. After a series of amazing explosions and power outages, the battle was over and the sky cleared, revealing a 10-foot deep crater with a sizzling shirtless Naruto lying in the center. His tails were black and singed with little hairs on fire. Naruto's once beautiful eyes were replaced with spinning spirals and his mouth was open wide with a dopey expression. Sakura charged down and went to heal the poor redhead. After a few minutes, the boy shot up, gasping for air, and was petting his tail and mumbling incoherent words to himself. He looked back up at a sheepish-looking Ino and sighed. Where the hell did you get enough chakra to use 3 ranked jutsu consecutively? Naruto asked. I know me and Sasuke can, but you? Hey. Ino's left eye twitched. What's that supposed to mean? Oh, wait. That didn't come out right. Naruto didn't reply quickly enough and was bonked on the side of his head by the 2 kunoichi present. Apology is not accepted, Naruto. Ino turned around and proceeded to walk away. But, wait. Naruto called out to Ino, causing her to stop and face Naruto. There is a way. What is it? Naruto asked. I'll do it. Then how are you supposed to apologize to a woman? Ino asked. Inwardly she and Sakura were smirking. Ino had him in a trap. Naruto looked to the male populace of the training ground. Each one said something that would, in normal circumstances, would have Ino loving you for days, but these weren't normal circumstances. Ino wanted Naruto for herself, but there was only one way to do that. The men continued to say stupid things, but then Naruto sighed and looked up at Ino. After nearly 10 minutes of talking and getting every guess wrong, Naruto knew what it was. Will you go out with me? Naruto asked, slowly, getting ready to flinch. But Ino gave him a small kiss on the cheek and started walking away. That is how you apologize to a woman. Ino walked up and out of the crater. And yes, I will. Pick me up at Friday night at 7. Don't forget, and no Ichiraku ramen. After a long moment of silence, the men had one question that went unanswered. What's wrong with ramen? At least you have an entire week to figure it out. Let's go. 7 o'clock Friday night. Naruto walked up to Ino's house with a civilian dress shirt over a pair of straight jeans. He was still wearing his black shinobi sandals and shinobi fingerless gloves. He was slightly nervous for the coming date. He hoped that nothing bad would happen and that it would go perfectly. He smiled to himself at the idea of being the boyfriend of one Ino Yamanaka. He walked up to their house and rang the doorbell. After a few minutes of waiting, the door opened to reveal Ino in a casual dress with a large belt wrapped around her waist. She also appeared to have been wearing makeup. Her hair was done differently too. Instead of letting it all flow in a large ponytail, It was instead up in a traditional hair bun with kabuki-styled chopsticks in the bun holding her hair together. She was wearing high-heeled kunoichi boots. Hey, Naruto-kun, she smiled brightly when she looked at his fairly simple outfit. It wasn't too fancy nor was it underdressed. Naruto's tails also seemed to be wagging with excitement when Naruto looked at his girlfriend. He had his patented foxy smile spread across his face as he reached out and took hold of Ino's hand. She gladly accepted and waved goodbye to her parents, and the pair started heading down the street. So Naruto-kun, where are we going? Ino asked. Somewhere really nice. Naruto smiled. It's a surprise, so just wait. Ino nodded her head as they continued their trek through the nightlife of the village. Even though the sun was down, people were still out. Shops were still on and the movie theater was full of teen couples going in and out. Restaurants were also bustling with people at this time. Naruto smiled as he continued to lead Ino through the streets. Ino suddenly noticed where they were. Naruto-kun, Ino asked out. Do you know where we are? Of course I do. Naruto smiled. He paid no attention to the looks that people were giving him and Ino. Many of them bowed deeply to Naruto while a few groups of girls giggled and blushed when Naruto would walk by. Ino was slightly peeved by this and tightened her hold on Naruto's hand. When they'd pass groups of girls, Ino would turn her head around and blow raspberries at them. Here we are, Ino-chan. Ino had just forced herself to stop looking at the high-class clothes shops and other shops resigned for only the richest families in Konoha. Hell, the entire quarter was known to be exclusively for only the richest people in Konoha and the world. Vacation houses, private condos, high-class kabuki theaters and the most expensive restaurants in the entire shinobi world. Holy shit, Aragawa Steakhouse. Ino's face was bright red. How? Even with a prominent clan like I have, we don't even have enough to eat here. Not only that, I heard that it's nearly impossible to get a reservation. It's a favor pulled by my grandfather. Naruto smiled. We can order whatever we want free of charge. Are you serious? Ino asked with wide eyes. Totally. Naruto smiled and held the door open for his girlfriend. Upon entering, she laid eyes on a beautiful grand foyer with a large fountain in the center. Above the fountain was a giant golden dragon statue that gazed out to the main entrance. Its eyes were made from the most amazing sapphires that the girl had ever laid eyes on. Well, they were the only sapphires that she'd ever laid eyes on, but that still didn't lessen the effect. There were at least 8 floors to this pagoda-like restaurant, each one seemingly getting better and better. Ino surmised that with each floor, the price rose by an undetermined amount. Already there were tons of people inside eating the gourmet steaks that Ino had dreamt of eating for the longest time. She kept admiring the furniture and internal design so much that she totally ignored Naruto. Ino-chan. Ino snapped from her stupor and looked at their waiter and then to Naruto, who seemed to have a smug smirk on his face. Naruto gave a small chuckle and nodded at the waiter. Ino had no idea what they were talking about but assumed that it was something important. When the couple walked past the large dragon head gate, they were led through the main foyer and they walked past millionaires and billionaires. Many of them were exclusive clients for Konoha. Many of these men and women employed Konoha shinobi with millions of their hard-earned ryo to protect their interests and by proxy, Konoha's interest. Almost immediately, hundreds of businessmen and businesswomen rose from their seats and started clapping for Naruto. That right there is the boy that freed Nami no Kuni from Gato's greedy clutches. A businessman said with a bright smile. Something about the man was extremely familiar. It's me, Naruto. Tazuna. Tazuna? Naruto asked with a genuinely happy expression. The old man had shaved his scraggly beard and had bought himself a good-looking, albeit expensive, suit. The man looked classy and had tons of money to boot. Hey Tazuna, why don't you join me and my girlfriend over a nice dinner? Naruto asked. I was planning on telling her all about the mission. Why not? Ino said with a bright smile. Damn, I was hoping it would only be us two, maybe next date. Alright then. Tazuna smiled and left his groupies to join the hero of Wave to their private 8th floor dinner room. When the doors opened, it came to reveal all glass windows and a perfect view of the entire village's nighttime skyline. The night was cloudless and the moon was at a waxing crescent. The vast multitude of colors that brightened the midnight Konoha scene brought wonders to Ino's chest. Not once has she ever seen something so beautiful. In the center of the room was a table filled with food and a series of plates. Naruto thought about it and surmised that this room was reserved for the daimyo himself and the Hokage. Let's get going then. Naruto smiled and the three sat at the table and grabbed rice and other sides for their plates. After a few moments of comfortable silence, Naruto had a Naruto moment and forgot what he was doing and missed his mouth by an inch while he was drinking his water. The water poured out and splashed all over his shirt, drenching it completely. Naruto sighed and unbuttoned his expensive silk shirt and tossed it away, leaving him shirtless at the table. Ino began to stutter and blush while Tazuna began to laugh. The old bridge builder went on to tell Ino about how he spent the last few days in Wave without a shirt. Ino giggled at most parts and made sideways glances at the fire head sitting next to her. On the outside she was smiling and enjoying the stories, but on the inside she was fuming that some Kiri girl beat her to claim the title of Naruto's first kiss. Shinobi or not, Ino was still a girl with girl needs. Naruto the entire time was smiling like an idiot while on the inside he was sweating bullets. Damn it, Tazuna. Why would you tell her that? Come on. I'm trying to apologize to her. Naruto nodded his head and gave a laugh when Tazuna pointed at him and asked if he remembered. Damn old man is trying to get me killed. Ino was nodding her head and soaking up the information like a sponge. She was actually considering kicking the poor redhead's ass. But she was going to leave that for when Naruto apologizes to her again. Ino was about to say something, but her shinobi senses started kicking in. She narrowed her eyes and snapped at Tazuna, signifying it was his time to shut up. Tazuna and Naruto were about to say something, but Ino quickly shut the two of them up again. She reached into her dress, causing both men to blush slightly. When she removed her hand from her bra, she held two kunai. Naruto and Tazuna's eyes were as wide as the gourmet plates that were placed in front of them. What the hell is she doing strapped with weapons? Naruto wondered. Marry her, Naruto-kun. Now that is what a kunoichi should always do. Kushina cheered from within his mindscape. I agree with Kushi-chan. Kura laughed. I can tell she's the one for you, Kit. What? Naruto whimpered. I caught you. Ino flicked her wrists and the kunai shot out and zoomed for the two waiters that entered the room. The kunai tore through their expensive suits, but they didn't tear through just that, but instead, it continued to dispel whatever jutsu they had put up. Once the smoke dispelled, it came to reveal a beet red Kakashi and a smiling Sasuke. What am I doing here? Sasuke coughed awkwardly. My house is that way. So is mine. Kakashi and Sasuke started heading for the windows. Yane. Naruto and Ino's eyes were wide as they followed the two shinobis' every step. Before Ino or Naruto could process what had just happened, the two charged forward and jumped through two windows, shattering them completely, and jumped 8 stories to the street below. Ino was silent for a good 10 minutes as the couple stared at the now windowless window. That was interesting to say the least, Naruto coughed. Later that night, after finishing off their dinner date, the two left the restaurant and were walking aimlessly through Konoha's rich district. Groups of people were walking throughout the streets even at this time of night. Naruto and Ino were enjoying each other's company more than what they would have ever thought. Even though Ino would punch him every time he would say something perverted. Ino pulled him into a few shops and had him buy designer everything. The poor boy was locked in a trap and he knew he couldn't say no. So he emptied 2 wallets filled with almost 200,000 ryo each. The blonde of the couple was surprised at how much money the boy had. Naruto went on to explain that his parents had massive bank accounts that had enough money to have a country like Nami no Kuni live in prosperity for 10 years straight without any economic decline. Ino's jaw dropped at the amount Naruto had access to. Ino took a moment to think about all of the things she would be able to buy with that kind of money. Images of shoes, dresses, shades, hats, puppies, and other types of things that rich people would want. She shook those images from her mind though. She was a shinobi and the village came before her personal interests. The two continued to walk through the street, but they were suddenly stopped by a group of rich civilian boys. They looked at Ino and completely ignored Naruto. Hey there, beautiful, one of them said as his friends pushed Naruto away. What are you doing out here with that guy? I'm on a date, so if you'll excuse me. Ino was about to walk away, but then the lead guy grabbed her wrist. He tightened his grip a little too much and was close to breaking her wrist. Ino was surprised. For a civilian, this kid was pretty strong. Naruto just stood and watched as a small smile spread on his face. They're gonna get it. Naruto inwardly laughed. Oh come on babe. Don't be like that, the guy said in a not so flirtatious voice. Shirtless firehead isn't that good looking any. I advise that you let me go. Ino said in a plain and emotionless voice. You have 10 seconds to do so or else. Really? The teen started laughing. 9. Oh come on p. 8. I can make it. 7. Don't be like th. 6. I Ju. 5. She. 4. I'm not let. 3. I'm not scared of some. 2. Bring it. Last warning. Ino turned to face them with a look that spelled horrifying torture. No. Okay. 1. She sent her fist flying into the boy's face. They clashed in a violent explosion. In the wake of the dust cloud kicked up was a meter-wide crater with a badly beaten-up rich kid in the center. His cheek was purple and 3 times its original size. His eyes were rolled into the back of his head and blood poured from the stumps in his mouth where teeth used to be. Who else wants some? Ino asked with no emotion. Oh, I should have introduced myself first. Yamanaka Ino, Kunoichi of Konohagakure. The rest of the group took off running, leaving their ring leader in the crater. Ino huffed and crossed her arms under her chest and walked up to Naruto with a slight scowl on her face. Naruto wrapped his arm around Ino's shoulder and held her close to him. Some of his tails wrapped around and brought her closer. Ino looked up to Naruto's face to see a small smile adorning his lips. Hey, I want to show you something, but before Ino could say something, she was hoisted up into Naruto's arms and carried up to the rooftops in the bridal-style position. Ino was slightly confused but didn't say anything. She rested her head on his strong shoulders and placed her right hand on his chest and felt his heartbeat and smiled slightly when she felt it increase speed. A few minutes later, here we are, Naruto said with a bright smile. He was nervous. He hoped that Ino would like this place. From here was the most beautiful view of the village. It was a place that wasn't frequented at all by anyone, shinobi and civilian alike. It was the Hokage Mountain. As of now they stood on the head of one of Konoha's greatest heroes, Naruto's father, Minato Namikaze. It's be beautiful, Ino gasped. How come this was never spoken of before? Ino asked. Because no one took the time to come up here. Naruto smiled and sat down. He motioned her to sit with him and she quickly complied, leaning against his left shoulder as she looked out at the bustling village. She could see everyone's house from where they were. She focused her eyes and she could see Sasuke at the park giving Sakura a rose. Cheesy but effective. She looked out to the forest surrounding the village and smiled at how peaceful the world looked from their position high above the village. She had no idea which Hokage they were sitting on and looked to Naruto for an answer. The redhead quickly read on what she wanted and nodded his head. We are sitting on the head of my father, Naruto smiled. During my early life, when I was being chased down by villagers and attacked, Ino and Naruto looked down slightly. I would always lose them on the way to the top of the mountain. One night though, I was feeling curious and I journeyed all the way to the top. Naruto looked out at the village. The moment I sat down on one of the platforms that jutted from the cliff face, I instantly fell in love with this place. Ino looked back to the village. Who couldn't fall in love with something so beautiful? So, A few days later, after I found out about this place, I would always come here during my birthday, since it was always the worst day to be out. Naruto took a deep breath and sniffled. Ino perked her head up and looked to see Naruto was crying. After I found out that my father was the Yondaime, I went up here find his head and I found out that it was the platform that I would always go to. Naruto smiled brightly and wiped away some flowing mucus. From that moment on, I knew that I was meant to protect this village. I knew what I had to do. Naruto let a few more tears fall before continuing. I also knew that my father loved me with all of his heart. He led me here that night all of those years ago. He and my mother are the reasons why I am training so hard to become the greatest Hokage. That was beautiful and Naruto-kun, Ino said with tears forming in the corners of her own eyes. Her breath hitched as she looked into Naruto's purple cerulean eyes, examining every feature of his irides. Her face was suddenly drawn close to Naruto's, just as his was to hers. Naruto's eyes traced the flawless features of her face. He looked into her sky-blue eyes. He realized how much definition there was to them, causing him to blush. Their lips grazed against each other. Ino shut her eyes completely and inched closer and closer. She could feel his lips on her own. They were so damn close, but yet so far. Naruto wanted to be the one to do it first, but he didn't want to be too upfront about kissing her, since she knew all about Haku. Ino wanted to be the one to start it, but she didn't want to seem like a desperate little girl. But under the moonlight, all of that was thrown out of the blonde's teenage girl head. She shot her hands to Naruto's cheeks and grabbed him, smashing her lips onto his. At first nothing was felt, but then an underlying flame was sparked between the two. Naruto's surprised eyes closed slowly as the kiss deepened. Ino's hands slid across his face and wrapped around his head as she pulled him closer to her. Naruto complied with no question and wrapped his own arms around her back. Naruto's tongue came out and rubbed against Ino's lips. She complied and let the redhead gain access to her mouth. His tongue exploring every part of her mouth. Soon enough their tongues were in a heated battle with one another, with Ino trying to maintain her dominance and Naruto trying to knock her a few pegs down. They went at it for quite some time. Neither of them looking at the time. After nearly 5 minutes of kissing, the two broke apart, with a long trail of saliva connecting their bottom lips together. Their faces were flushed and the two of them were breathing hard. Naruto's hair was ruffled and Ino's dress was disheveled in certain places. All they did was kiss. Naruto's tails were affectionately wrapped around her, thus keeping her close to the shirtless redhead. Ino gave him a kiss on his neck and laid her head on his shoulder. She raised her head and put her lips so close to the boy's fox ears that he could feel her warm breath, which caused him to shiver from excitement. We should do this again, Naruto-kun. 8 months have passed since Wave and the Chunin exams were literally just around the corner. Not only that, but Team 7 as a whole had gained fame and recognition throughout the shinobi world, and they were only genin. In the few months that had passed since their first C-ranked mission, they were given a series of C-ranked missions in which there was a reoccurring theme. They were plagued with a S-ranked missing ninja. But since they had experience with that kind of situation, they were able to suppress the threats as quickly as possible. In most accounts of the three taking down our S-ranked missing nin, they did it on their own, with their sensei incapacitated somewhere. Kakashi of course denied those fallacies. Another source of fallacies that were denied by Kakashi was the ongoing rumor about the last of the Hatake seeing the snake mistress of Konoha, i.e. Mitarashi Anko. Many people got word from Naruto and his teammates when they'd stalked their sensei. They claimed that it was stealth and espionage training. But in truth, the three genin were just trying to get whatever dirt they could on their sensei. Not once were their C-ranked missions normal ones. But because of their initial success and the way they handled the Nami no Kuni mission, they were able to build up on that experience and apply it to their other more difficult C-ranked missions. It was as if the Hokage was purposely setting those missions up as a test of their power. Little did they know, the old monkey was doing just that. Back in the years of his youth, he had his genin team of Orochimaru, Senju Tsunade and Namikaze Jiraiya take a long series of life-threatening combat missions during both the Second and Third Shinobi World Wars, to test their combat prowess. He and Jiraiya did the same to Minato when he and Kushina would go on missions together. The missions were designed to give the selected shinobi skills to excel in places that would be perfect for them. Hiruzen was training Naruto for combat and for him to understand strategy and tactics, since the redhead was the one leading most of the missions aside from Sasuke and a few times Sakura. The redhead was on a steady path to becoming Hokage. The Sarutobi was having Sasuke train his Sharingan to use to the fullest potential, so that one day, the young boy could topple Danzo and take his place as the head of Root. And Sakura was learning to master her medical ninjutsu by constantly having to heal wounds on her teammates that were progressively getting worse and worse with each mission they took. She was on the road to rivaling the slug Sannin herself. Overall, he'd give the Genin team SS ranked in all areas of combat awareness. They worked together like a well-oiled machine, like a family. Their team dynamics were unseen as ever than before. Not only that, but their lives didn't revolve completely around being a shinobi. They had extremely healthy social lives as seen from how Sasuke and Sakura are always together and Naruto and Ino are literally near inseparable. Sarutobi took a deep puff of his pipe and sighed. That kind of teamwork hasn't been seen since the original Ino Shikacho formation. Sarutobi was slightly disappointed when he found that the next generation wasn't working as well as their fathers did. The only one so far doing most of the work and the unofficial team leader was Ino. Shikamaru was lazier than his father, but 1,000 times smarter. Choji was powerful, but lacked the mobility that a shinobi should have. Being an Akamichi was no excuse. But even then, they had exceptional teamwork and they were able to handle their fair share of C-rank missions. Then there was Team 8. The perfect tracking team in all respects. Hiruzen smiled and took another puff of his pipe. Hinata worked perfectly with her two teammates. The Hyuga would pinpoint enemies, Kiba would come in and weed them out. Once the targets were out and in the open, Shino would jump in and send out his beetles to suck the chakra from the targets' bodies to disable them. Perfect search and eliminate team, as seen by their impressive record of 15 C-ranked missions in the last 8 months. All in all, Hiruzen was hoping to see the Rookie 11 in the Chunin exams this year, and be the first generation to be entered into the exams together. He looked up from the team registration form in front of him and looked up to see various Junin senseis of Genin teams from the village. He couldn't help but smile when he saw Kurenai, Asuma and Kakashi all talking with the more flamboyant Maida guy. It's time to start with Chunin exam registration. Hiruzen said, I'd like to start with the rookie instructors. I, Sarutobi Asuma, nominate Team 10. I, Yuhi Kurenai, nominate Team 8. I, Hitaki Kakashi, nominate Team 7. Almost instantly there were whispers and comments being made about Team 7. The Prodigy Team as they were called. They were rumored to have excelled in every mission given to them, even though each one was botched by high-leveled missing ninja coming into the picture. Soon enough there were comments about how Kakashi was incapacitated in many of them and how his students always came to save him. Kakashi was about to save the only dignity he had left, but all of the whispering and talking was silenced when Hiruzen raised his hand. Kakashi sighed in relief and scratched his face awkwardly. He looked over to see Kurenai giggling slightly but stopped and looked to the Hokage. Alright. Seeing as how no one here has any disagreement with the nominations, Hiruzen stayed quiet to let whomever had second thoughts to speak, but continued after a few moments of silence. Then it's official. The rookie Konoha 11 shall compete in this year's Chunin exams. Later that day. That was freaking amazing. Naruto laughed as he and his friends left the high-classed cinema theaters in the rich district of the village. His arm was locked with Ino, Sasuke's with Sakura, Kiba's with Hinata and Choji with some civilian that he met a few months prior. She was skinny but had strength to make up for her slender build. And she was a lot like Ino and Sakura when enraged. Shikamaru wasn't there since he was too lazy to get up that morning. I know, right? Choji laughed. Those special effects make all of those crazy powers that she has look so damn real. I wish I had powers like that. Kiba sighed. Suddenly everyone stopped and looked at Kiba with a strange look. Kiba looked back at them with an aloof expression. Sasuke leaned to Naruto and Choji leaned in to listen. Sasuke was whispering something and it was pissing Kiba off. Suddenly the three boys started chuckling like idiots, making Kiba furrow his brow even more. Next to him, Ino was whispering what Sasuke had said to Hinata. The two girls started giggling and soon enough Sasuke filled Sakura in on the joke and Choji filled his girlfriend in. Soon enough, Kiba was left out of the loop. The entire group was laughing so hard that they had caught the attention of many of the passerbyers, receiving strange looks from some of them. While some of the more snobby rich guys would catcall the girls of the group. They continued walking through the streets and they caught sight of one of the most expensive clothing stores in the entire shinobi world. Eternally 21. Naruto and Sasuke's eyes widened as memories of what happened the last time they went, came flashing in their minds. Seeing as this version of the store was explicitly female, the two boys had nothing to do except pay the ridiculous prices for their girls' shoes and clothes. But they were happy. At least they weren't super uptight about being shinobi and took the time to act like women. The girls of each couple pulled their bows towards the front doors of the store, but they were blocked by three junins. Kakashi gave them a smile. Kurenai gave them a small laugh and Asuma simply spit out his cigarette onto the paved road. Suddenly the shop owner came out. He was a scrawny man in his 30s most likely and had two extremely ripped men wearing suits right behind him. The shop owner also had on an expensive business suit. Smoking is prohibited here, Shinobi-san. The man said with a strange accent to his voice. Dude, this guy acts and talks like a girl. Sasuke snickered to Naruto. They may be the most powerful genin in the world, but they had the maturity of toddlers. Oh, I'm sorry little man, Asuma said in a sarcastic manner. The two bodyguards inched closer to Asuma who seemed to not even care. Mind telling your boys to back away? I'm in the mood for not giving a. Asuma narrowed his eyes and equipped his trench knives. Wind chakra was absorbed and extended the cutting length. The bodyguards backed away. Oh, stop this, Shinobi-san. The man playfully tapped Asuma on his right bicep. No need to get so riled up now. I swear I read something like this happening in the desert edition of the Ika Ika Paradise. Kakashi was bashed on the head by not one, not even two, but four women at the same time. All men flinched, except the shop owner. Shortly after the escalating situation was diffused, the respective junin of each team shunshined with their teams to their respective training grounds. Kakashi did a quick evaluation of each of his students. Naruto was first. The redhead had excelled as a strategist and tactician. The kid was able to come up with strategies in the middle of combat, and most of his strategies worked without any problem. Not only that, but the kid was basically a jutsu sponge. Every technique taught to him by Kakashi, Asuma and Jiraiya, the kid not only mastered them, but made them even more powerful. His mastery over water and lightning was perfection and his master of wind was almost there. Jiraiya even said that Naruto is close to unlocking the Tsutomu Mi. The second stage of the Kei's Mi. Sasuke was a genius in all aspects of the word, but the kid knew what humility was and didn't let it get to his head. The Uchiha looked to Naruto and Sakura as levels to rate himself against. If he lagged behind either or, he would revamp his training to make sure that he doesn't fail his brother and girlfriend. Another great trait that the Uchiha had, was the ability to move on and gain power through other means beside the normal Uchiha way, through hatred. Sasuke continued to grow stronger because of his will to protect his new family. Like Naruto, Sasuke was an offensive jutsu sponge and soaked up everything that he was taught and everything that he found in his jutsu library. Then there was Sakura. Out of the three students that he had, he couldn't help but say that hands down, she had grown the most. From earlier reports about the pink-haired banshee, as she was called, she concentrated more on the Uchiha more than actually becoming a shinobi. But ever since Wave, the girl had gained respect from her peers and from herself. She even cut her hair to show that she was serious about being a powerful shinobi so that wouldn't hinder her team. But unlike Sasuke and Naruto, she mostly excelled as a defensive and support type of kunoichi, something extremely rare for a kunoichi, since it required lots of strength to keep the flanks of the offensive type cleared of any attacks. Sakura also was referred to as the second Tsunade, since she absorbed medical ninjutsu and medical theorem much like how Sasuke and Naruto were for combat. With his evaluations done, he nodded his head and looked up to the heavens and smiled a foxy smile, much like something that Naruto and his parents did on a daily basis. Kakashi's heart pounded with excitement. I didn't fail you, father, or you sensei, or even you Obito. Kakashi smiled even brighter. I have succeeded in leading these children. Okay, Kakashi said as he looked back down at his students. I have wonderful news to tell you. All three looked at him with their heads tilted slightly. I have nominated you three for the Chunin exams. Kakashi said with a smile. I hope that you three will accept. It's completely optional, so if you don't, it's understandable. No rookie team has ever gone to the Chunin exams and survived. Kakashi waited for the great and inspirational response from his students. But, those teams aren't us. Sakura cheered. Of course not. Sasuke added. We are Team 7. Naruto started as his smile widened even more. And we accept. All three said as they entered chibi form and threw up peace signs before returning back to normal. Haha. Come to the academy in 2 weeks for official entrance to the test. Kakashi smiled. So, for the next 2 weeks, would you three like to train or just sit around? Kakashi asked, even though he knew what the answer was. Let's train. A few hours later, Team 7 was on their way to get some ramen, but then Naruto and Sasuke sensed a familiar presence coming from a nearby fence. Naruto asked Sasuke side and scratched the back of their heads. Damn it, little K, Sasuke said. If you're going to camouflage with the fence, then at least match the patterns of the fence. Naruto deadpanned. Bah, I knew that having you two as my mentors, that I would truly become strong. Konohamaru walked up to the older boys and gave them both a hug. Naruto ni, can we come over to your house again and play with the ducks? Sure thing, little K. Naruto smiled at his little brother. Hey, look over there. It seems Shikamaru is being manhandled by some chick. Sweet. I wanna see. Both boys took off, leaving the Konohamaru core and Sakura behind in a dust storm. The two boys closed the distance in less than a second. They both stopped to see Shikamaru staring a hot blonde-haired Suna Kunoichi down. Her eyebrow was ticking as their staring contest ensued. Next to her, Ino had an annoyed look on her face as she too glared Shikamaru down. Behind them next to a tree was a Suna shinobi in a black full-body cat suit reading an Ika Ika book with Choji. Naruto and Sasuke put 2 and 2 together and laid their eyes on a green book. The title read Ika Ika Paradise. The Jungle Edition. Hana takes a swing for Ryu's tree. Naruto and Sasuke's eyes were wide when they read the title. Must be from his father's secret stash. Naruto and Sasuke both concluded at the same time. What was that, Naruto-kun? Kushina asked with a menacing tone. Her hair was floating around, signifying her red-hot-blooded habanero state. In nothing, Ka-chan. Oh, Kushi-chan. Calm down. It's not that bad. Kura came to defend Naruto. Back in the real world, Naruto was approached by another sand shinobi. This kid had a large sand gourd on his back and seemed to have eye bags underneath his eyes. The kid looked to Naruto and started chattering like a tanuki. Naruto's eyes widened immediately and started growling like a fox. The conversation brought attention from the pervert on death row, and Hana and Riku giving full body massages to Ryu. What number? Gaara chattered. 9. You. Naruto growled. 1. Pleasure to see you again, Kurane. Gaara added. Oh, it's nice to see you being respectful for once. Naruto growled with a little chuckle. I like how your vessel looks. Is it possible to have it done with mine? Gaara chattered back. Of course. Just force out your sand and I'll use my tails to shield off the area so it'll be contained. Naruto replied. Suddenly, the cork popped off of Gaara's gourd and poured out to form half of a circle around the two Jinchuriki, and Naruto's tail shot out to form the second half. A powerful and bright white light glowed form within the ball. From within, Gaara's appearance started changing. After a few minutes of iridescent blinding light, the tails and sand retracted to reveal Gaara with a sandy tanuki tail. Gaara's eyes seemed relaxed and he as a whole seemed less tensed. I feel powerful. Naruto finished. Don't let it get to your head though. Naruto smiled. You three must the children of the Cage, right? Yes they are. A gruff and authoritative voice reverberated behind them. All 12 heads turned to see a man just slightly taller than Temari wearing robes that some semblance to the robes worn by the Hokage. The only difference was the fact that instead of the kanji for fire on his hat, it had the kanji for wind. The man removed his mask to look at Naruto and his youngest son. Two Jinchuriki stood in front of him, both of which had done something strange. Kage-sama. The Konoha shinobi bowed deeply. We didn't mean any disrespect for not noticing you. None taken, Uzumaki Namikaze-san. The Kage smiled and removed his mask to reveal a man that seemed to be only in his mid-40s. He nodded at his three children. I look forward to seeing you and Uchiha-san in the finals. I'm pretty sure that it'll be one hell of a match, especially since you two are the highest-ranking genin in the bingo books continent-wide. Really? Naruto and Sasuke looked at each other and looked back to the Cage. What rank? Double S ranked. The Cage tossed them an updated bingo book. It is the first time in history that genin were ever double S ranked, let alone in a bingo book. Dude, this is so awesome. Naruto smiled brightly. Thank you Kage-sama. 2 weeks later, the Konoha 11 made their way to the academy together. They were silent and surprisingly nervous. All around them at the entrance to the academy were teenagers and genin from Sand or from smaller shinobi villages that came from the smaller nations that bordered the elemental nations. The three teams went into the academy and quickly saw through the genjutsu and headed up to the actual room. Upon entering they came upon a sight that they didn't think they would ever see. I thought Kiri had a civil war. Sakura said, remembering back to what Haku had told her the week before they left Wave. I hope Haku and Zabuza made it out alive. I thought Iwa and Kuma hated us. Ino added. And I thought Odo isolated itself from the mainland elemental nations, Shikamaru piped. Naruto closed his eyes but widened them upon sensing the three masses of malicious chakra. Naruto looked to Gaara, who seemed to have sensed it too. Naruto flashed the signs for 2, 3 and 4, signifying which Biju he sensed. The only problem was that he couldn't tell if the Jinchuriki were allies or not. Hey, I think you rookies might want some help with these exams. A random genin from Konoha said. In his arms was a massive stack of cards. These here are ninja info cards. Give me a name and it will have everything about that person. Alright, Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, Sabaku no Gaara, and Rock Lee. You got it, Kabuto said and pulled out 3 cards. He channeled his chakra into it from what Sasuke could see with his Sharingan. Rock Lee. He has no skills in ninjutsu, or genjutsu. He relies explicitly on taijutsu. His teammates are Hiroshi Tenten and Hyuga Neji. Their Junin sensei is Maeda Guy. He has completed 10 D rank missions and 2 C rank missions. Sabaku no Gaara. That's strange. It can't read his skills. His teammates are his siblings, Temari and Kankuro. Their Junin sensei is Baki. He has completed no D ranks and went straight to complete 10 C ranks and Okami, an A rank. But that's not all. He was able to make it through all of his missions unscathed. Now for the finale. The entire room was silent as everyone awaited to hear Naruto's card. Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. Kabuto's eyes went wide. His skills are off the charts except in genjutsu. His teammates are Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura. Their Junin sensei is Hatake Kakashi. He has completed 50 D rank missions, 30 C rank missions, 20 of which were upgraded to B ranks and the other 10 were upgraded to A ranks. So in total, he finished 20 B ranks and 11 A ranks. Not to mention the K's me. Naruto elbowed Sasuke and the Uchiha instantly got the message. The two jumped onto a desk and smiled at the competition. Naruto's tail swished in anticipation. I am Uchiha Sasuke. I am Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. And we are going to kick all of your asses. The two boys shouted out. The two boys flared their dujutsu revealing the Sharingan and the Kazemi causing uproar with the older Kumo and Iwa Genin. They were told scary stories as children about the Kazemi, the dujutsu of the feared Minato Namikaze. But before any hostilities could start, everyone was shut up by the sounds of popping. All heads turned to the front of the classroom. Out of all of the Chunin and Junin at the front of the classroom, Naruto and Sasuke were able to notice Izumo and Katetsu. The two boys waved at them. Shut your traps, maggots. Or else I will shut your faces. The man's voice was so powerful it sounded like any more and your organs would shut down from fear of him going through with his threats. Now take a seat. Each student was placed in random areas of the testing room which was actually quite large. Sakura was 20 rows away from Naruto and Sasuke was another 20 rows behind Sakura. Naruto sat in the front of the class with a calm expression. Ino was seated next to him. He received a wink from Katetsu and Izumo. It seems they pulled an unasked favor for Naruto. They owed the kid for what he did. Anyway, Naruto sighed and nodded his head at Ino. His tail swished around and he would signal Ino for answers just in the case that he didn't have any answers. He shrugged and looked down at his test and realized that there were nearly 30 sheets of paper with a varying number of questions on each sheet, front and back. Here are the rules. You and your team have 10 points. If you cheat and get caught, then you will lose 2 points for each time you cheat. First time you as an individual cheats, then you will be penalized. If you or a teammate get caught again, then your entire team gets penalized. The giant man at the front of the room said. Now, if you get caught cheating and deny it, you will receive another point reduction. If you get caught and try to defend yourself to me, then I will throw you out of the window. The man finished and placed his pointer on the podium at the front of the class. Now then here's the overview. Don't get caught. Don't piss me off, and have fun. Begin. Naruto looked at the first question and was surprised at how easy and straightforward they were. Tactics and Shinobi Theorem. Simple stuff that Naruto was able to pick up on, because of the C-ranked missions he had taken for the last few months. Naruto smiled brightly when he realized that many of the genin present probably don't even know a quarter of the stuff on this test. The only genin that could stand a chance was definitely the Konoha 11, Gaara's team, and the teams that held the other 3 Jinchuriki. Naruto looked around subtly trying to not get caught. Spending much of the 8 months spying on Kakashi, made his observation skills skyrocket, that and the fact that the redhead started peeking with his grandfather, much to his mother's dismay. Naruto sighed and made a quick count of the genin present. There were about 10 teams from Iwa, 10 teams from Kumo, 5 teams from Suna, 5 from Odo, around 20 from Suna, and at least 50 were from Konoha. The boy thought about the exams a bit more and surmised that there had to be more rooms than just the one that he was in. 55 minutes later, Naruto had finished his test and smiled. He put his pencil down and looked about. Ino awoke from her seemingly peaceful nap, and started scribbling down answers on her test. She gave an unnoticeable smile to Naruto. Crash. All heads shot up to see Ibiki throwing a genin out of the 3rd floor window. All eyes were wide. This guy isn't around. Naruto paled and gave Kami silent thanks for allowing him to finish the blasted test faster than what he hoped. After another 5 minutes, Ibiki walked back to the front of the class and took a deep breath. Pencils down. Genin fumbled with their writing utensils and looked up at the Junin with fear in their eyes. Time for the final question. What? Some Konoha genin shouted. You didn't say anything about a final question. And Iowa Genin shouted instead. Come on. Silence. Ibiki's deadly voice shut off all forms of protest. This is my test, so I make the rules. If anyone has a ing problem with it, then they could leave and fail this goddamn test. Ibiki pointed to the door and waited for another half-assed remark. Good. So this last question is optional. If you choose not to take it, then you and your team may be able to take the test again later this year. But if you choose to take the test and get it wrong, then you and your team will never be able to become Chunin. What? Some genin shouted. This. Let's go. Soon enough, half of the teams that were in the room got up and left. When some of the teams saw their friends leave, they too left, feeling the pressure of the question. But Naruto saw through the act. Team 7 encountered a missing ninja that acted the exact same way. Naruto raised his hand. Soon enough, a few more teams left when they saw the Uzumaki Namikaze giving up. But after the numbers had been thinned out, Naruto slammed his hand down on the desk. Naruto had a cocky smile spread across his face. I don't give a damn if I get the question wrong. I have to become Hokage one day, and I can't do that if I'm too afraid to answer a simple question. Soon enough, the remaining teams had their confidence restored. They looked up at the fiery redhead with big smiles and cocky smirks. Naruto's tails were swishing about with excitement. All right then, you pass. Ibiki had a large smile on his face. Naruto's face faltered and collapsed on his seat. The genin present let the breath that they didn't know they held go. Some of the genin started chuckling to themselves before looking up to Ibiki for an explanation. I already asked the final question. It was whether or not you want to answer the question. Ibiki took off his hitai to reveal a mass of deep scars and flailed skin. In our line of crash, shattered glass flew everywhere, forcing everyone to cover their eyes. In the front of the classroom, wearing a light brown trench coat and skimpy clothing underneath, was the rumored love interest of one Hatake Kakashi. Behind her was a large banner that said Mitarashi Anko, Konoha's sexy beast. The banner was held up by kunai embedded into the walls. The lady had an Ika book instead of the normal stick of dango. Crash. Soon enough, the pretty boy, Hatake Kakashi, came crashing through another window with an enraged look on his face. He ran up to Anko and started fighting over the precious book in her hands, while she tried to reach for the box of dango hidden behind his back. Ibiki sighed and rolled his eyes. Not only was the exuberant purple-haired snake mistress early, but she and Kakashi were shamelessly flirting in front of everyone. Team 7 face planted with their desks when they saw how Kakashi was acting. A few minutes later. So the rumors have been confirmed. Kakashi and Anko shrugged. The snake lady then turned to the class to see all of them beat red from the little show of PDA between two Junin in their mid-20s. Oh okay. So I'm Mitarashi Anko. Meet me at the Forest of Death, I mean Training Ground 44. The lady gave a maniacal laugh before the two Junin shunshined away in a swirl of leaves. The surviving genin got up and started filing out of the classroom and headed out of the academy. Sakura was in Sasuke's arms and Ino was in Naruto's. Now some shinobi owe the genin of Team 7 some money. Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura said quite loudly. Suddenly a little over 40 Junin and nearly 60 Chunin surrounded the three genin with their wallets out. The amount of money that each of them received ranged from 200 ryo to nearly 2,000. The amount they received ranged from person to person. I like the fact that my own students are using my love life as a way to make money. Kakashi deadpanned from behind with Anko enwrapped in his right arm. The sensei had a blank expression on his face, but then he leaned in on his three students. If you each buy me something Ika related, then I think we can forget that this all happened. Kakashi had a perverted smile on his face. Think of it as compensation for having to put up you three brats for a little over a year. I know what he wants. Naruto and Sasuke cheered and ran off, leaving their girls behind. They do know that we need to head off to the Forest of Death, right? Ino deadpanned. I don't even know, Sakura facepalmed before taking off with Ino to catch their idiot boyfriends. Ino and Sakura had caught up with their eccentric boyfriends and dragged them towards the forest of death. They passed many shinobi who recognized them instantly and started cheering for Team 7, leaving Ino feeling slightly misplaced. But she felt happy and smiled at how far Naruto had come from being the dead last for 7 years in the academy. It wasn't his fault though. It was because of his ungodly amount of chakra. The amount that she wished she had. They made it to the training ground and found nearly 50 teams waiting and just conversing with one another. Naruto looked around and dusted himself off and nodded his head. He was right. There were other rooms for testing, he just got lucky or unlucky, depending on who you're talking to, and got ibiki. Naruto heard things from other shinobi when they were passing by. Apparently news gets out fast and everyone knew about Naruto's little speech he made. Naruto sighed, liking the attention, but found it extremely creepy how everyone seemed to know everything that he did. It was as if someone was spying on him. He thought of many reasons as to why someone would want to spy on him, and only one made the most sense. Someone must hate him. Naruto thought of all of the people that he had wronged in the last month. Only one name stuck out the most. Kakashi. Naruto spied on him, humiliated him, teased him, and beat him at sparring for the first time, but what reason did Kakashi have to spy on Naruto beside that? But Naruto shrugged and chose to place the blame on Sasuke like he always did. Alright, Gaki, Anko said. There seemed to be something black on her neck that she was trying her hardest to hide. Her face was flushed and her trench coat seemed shut tight. Sakura and Ino's eyes were wide when they caught sight of this. They looked to their side and saw Team 9 walking up to them. Lee and Neji walked over to Naruto and Sasuke. The rest of the Rookie 11 split into two groups, the men and the girls got together. The guys were talking about normal guy things while the girls. They all noticed the minor differences in Anko's clothing and posture. Even though all of them were virgins, they knew the telltale signs of intercourse. And also the fact that Anko was trembling. It had to have been good, albeit quick. Ino watched closely and smiled even brighter when Anko's lips twitched, showing that she had stretched out mouth a little too much in the past few moments and her lips are still adjusting to the width. Anko's been giving some head to a lucky scarecrow, if you know what I mean. Ino nudged Sakura. All of the kunoichi in the group got the innuendo instantly. They began to giggle perversely. Behind them in an even larger group, Neji brought his portable TV and played the motion picture rendition of Ica Ica Paradise, Lost at Sea edition. The boys were blushing like madmen and were so glued to the little screen that they didn't notice a certain someone creeping up on them. Nice movie. Anko hissed like a seductive snake. Her tongue slithered out and started licking Naruto's cheek. You know, ratting me and Kakashi out like that had some serious balls, kid. Anko's hands suddenly wrapped around his torso. She gasped when she felt how strong he was. When she looked up from his body, she locked eyes with him, instantly becoming entranced by his eyes. Aye. Hands off my man, Ino screeched. The blonde pushed Anko off of Naruto, but before the purple-haired woman could hit the ground, Naruto's tail shot out and wrapped around her to make sure that she wouldn't loosen her clothing. He pulled her up and set her down on the ground. His tails tightened the trench coat strap to keep it closed. Anko blushed at how soft Naruto was being. Ino glared at Anko but let it slide. Oh okay, so Gakis, this test is to test how well you use the tactics and skills that you should have gained over the years or year of experience out in the field. Anko then walked away from the rookie teams and headed to the front of the entire congregation. There are two types of scrolls that will be handed out at random, a heaven scroll and an earth scroll. The objective is to get the scroll opposite to your original scroll. Let's say you have an earth scroll. Then your objective is to get the heaven scroll while still keeping the earth scroll and vice versa. Anko nodded to one of the proctors and a group of instructors started handing out papers to each genin to sign. 30 minutes later. What scroll did you guys get? Naruto asked Ino as their teams walked over to their designated gate. Heaven. Which did you get? Ino asked. Heaven as well. Naruto smiled brightly. Let's watch out in there. We'll never know what we'll encounter, Yano. Alright, Gakis. Get ready. Anko shouted from the watchtower nearby. Get set. All teams hunched over. Ino fixed her bangs. Sasuke tapped his hair. Sakura got her game face on. Naruto drew out 2 3-prong kunai. The four were bouncing on the heels of their feet. Excitement was almost uncontainable. Go. Immediately, all teams charged through the gates. The fence closed immediately behind them, effectively locking them in the training ground. A few minutes passed by and Team 7 was making good progress, but for some strange reason they didn't encounter any teams. Naruto's Sage Chakra sensed an overly dark chakra signature coming from behind. Duck. The genin forced their weight forward, and a gigantic snake flew right above them, crashing into a tree. The three landed on a tree branch and looked to see 3 Odo shinobi. Something about them had the senjutsu chakra going nuts. The man in front of them had flowing black hair with a large rice picker hat. Next to him was a pale-skinned teen with a dark look on his face. On the other side of the hat-wearing Odo shinobi, was a mask-wearing boy. I see that my luck has brought me here, to the last Uchiha and Namikaze. The man said with the slipperiness of a snake. The man's tongue shot out and slithered like a snake's did. He sped through hand seals, but Naruto beat him to it. Kuchio's no jutsu. Naruto slammed his hand down. Suddenly there was a series of pops and small clouds of smoke rising. From the smoke, a pack of foxes dressed in samurai armor and armed with katanas appeared. They all looked to Naruto and without a word, they charged for the sound shinobi. Naruto and the rest of Team 7 took off for the tower in an attempt to lose the sound ninja. Naruto jumped ahead, but didn't realize where he was going. Naruto! Sakura screamed. Snake! Naruto slowed down too late and was swallowed by the snake. Sasuke and Sakura stopped abruptly and started burning through hand seals. Sakura looked behind and sighed in relief when she couldn't see the Odo genin or the foxes anymore. She and Sasuke took deep breaths and channeled their chakra. Sakura leaned on her right leg and held her right hand out. Sasuke leaned on his left leg and held his left hand out. After a few minutes, lightning formed and sparked to life. Rasengan. The muffled shout caused Sakura and Sasuke to hold back their attack. The snake's belly started expanding, but them exploded, showering the area with snake bits and snake entrails. Naruto was in the epicenter, covered in the digestive juices of the large summon. That was the first time in his entire life since the Hunt the Demon days that the redhead had feared for his own life. Naruto. Do you know who that man was? Kushina asked out loud. Nah, Ka-chan. Naruto replied. That was Orochimaru of the Sannin. She answered his unasked question. He is as much of snake as his summons are. Be careful, Naruto-kun. Naruto looked over at his 2 teammates to see them with disappointed looks on their faces. Naruto didn't understand why. The two have used the Chidori on so many missing ninja on their previous missions, but then again, they have never killed a summon before. But they were never swallowed by on, were they? Naruto shrugged that argument away and walked up to his teammates. Sasuke rolled his eyes and tossed Naruto the scrolls. The redhead quickly put them in his pouch and drew out his 3-pronged kunai and took to the trees with his team. Along the way, they encountered a hidden rain team. Hand over your scroll, the genin said from beneath his mask. Like hell I will. Naruto sped through hand seals. Fuden. Datapa. Naruto took a deep breath and shot it out in the form of a giant wave. The spiraling Kazemi added more volume and depth to the attack. The rain genin watched it head for him with wide eyes. The attack connected with its mark, and blew the genin into a large tree, embedding him into the base of the tree. That was a little too easy. Naruto gave a wry laugh and continued on his journey to the tower. An hour later. You know, those foxes were a challenge. Orochimaru hissed from behind. It took me a little over a good hour to finally beat them. Orochimaru shot a large bundle of snakes from his sleeve. The snakes hit Sasuke and Sakura multiple times and sent them flying into a tree. Orochimaru had a mission. He wanted that Sharingan even if it was the last thing he did. Orochimaru extended in neck to bite Sasuke on his shoulder, but something unexpected happened. Naruto kawaramide with Sasuke. Naruto pushed Sakura out of the way. Orochimaru was moving too quickly and ended up sinking his teeth into Naruto's neck. Naruto's went wide as his body was filled with tainted power. Almost immediately, the mindscape that held Kushina and Kuro was experiencing an infestation of snakes. Kushina drew out a katana and Kuro transformed into her human form. Back in the outside world, Orochimaru was actually fine with the change of plans. The Kazemi was the only dujutsu that could rival the Sharingan in power. He retracted his head and turned his attention to the other two genin, but he found that they were gone. Not only that, but he couldn't sense their presence. Orochimaru was surprised. It was either they were hiding their chakra, which was highly unlikely, or they were moving too fast to be sensed. Chidori. Sakura and Sasuke's voices sounded at the same time as two little children appeared at Orochimaru's sides, with their hands covered in lightning. It happened in a split second, and Orochimaru now had two hands embedding into his body. Both hands were drenched in his blood. Orochimaru coughed, but smiled at the genin and shed his body. Bastard! What have you done to me? Naruto was struggling to stand up straight. His Kazemi started spiraling to speeds unknown. Naruto, enraged, started shooting off multiple barrages of water, lightning and wind mixed together. The attacks were tearing through the forest, but each attack was dodged or blocked by the ever-evasive Sannin. Naruto suddenly collapsed and fell to his knees and passed out. Naruto. A few hours later, Team 7 was exhausted, and they were down a scroll since they had to give it up for easy passage. Sakura and Sasuke were down on chakra and Naruto was out. Naruto, on the other hand, though, was literally having an internal battle with himself, or rather for himself against foreign enemies that invaded his system. In his mindscape, Naruto-kun, Kushina screamed. She drew out a three-pronged kunai and hurled it through the air. The kunai sliced off the head of an attacking snake that Naruto missed. The redhead nodded his head and channeled his Kitsune Senjutsu chakra, turning his Rasengan blood red, instead of the normal blue. Naruto charged forward and shoved his Rasengan into the underbelly of a 20-foot-tall king cobra snake. The three have been fighting the snakes for what seemed to be days, when in reality it has only been an hour. Kuro was in her nine-tailed fox mode and was battling against a 200-foot anaconda that had invaded the mindscape. Her tails quickly wrapped around the massive slithering monster and ripped it apart, but the strange thing about it was that every time Kuro would cause damage to it, the snake would only multiply each half. Each half would split in half and each half of that half would grow back to its original size. Kushina was struggling by herself against an onslaught of snake clones. She really wished she had her swords right now. She held her katana out to her right side with the blade pointing outward. She channeled Charka to her feet and threw up a one-handed hand seal. Shunpo. She vanished and reappeared behind the snake clones. A second later, the clones exploded in blood, and fell apart. She ducked a snake's bite and kicked another clone in the throat. She jumped up and rammed her knee in its face and shoved her sword into its chest. 5 more snake clones formed and started charging for her. She let the sword go and back-flipped off of the dead clone and rammed her fist into one of the clone's jaws, sending it flying. Naruto went through a series of back-flips and reached into his holsters and sent off barrage after barrage of kunai. Snakes and snake clones were torn apart, but he was close to running out. He activated the Kazemi and started channeling lightning and water together and sending vortex after vortex into the massive waves of snakes. It seemed that everything they did would only cause more and more snakes to come out from the massive seal on the wall. Kuro went back to her human form and jumped onto a snake clone's head and shoved a blood-red Rasengan into its chest, completely blowing the chest out of its back. Kuro landed and barrel rolled while slashing out with her tails. Naruto saw this and nodded at the idea, and his tails shot out, grabbing onto different snakes and ripping their heads off. One of his other tails shot off and impaled a snake clone. Naruto swung the damned clone off and threw the collapsing corpse off of his body and sent it flying to another wave of incoming snakes. Kushina pushed her son out of the way and beheaded a 10-foot-long king cobra snake and kicked the head into another equally long snake. Kushina bent back to dodge an incoming dash from a python. Naruto and Kura turned around and both forced their Rasengan into the snake's head, vaporizing the snake's head into nothing. Kura grabbed Kushina with her tails and threw her up into the air. Haijutsu. Kuchio's no jutsu. Kushina spun in the air and a large series of seal matrices spread in midair. Suddenly a convocation of eagles shot from the massive white smoke blast. Almost immediately, the snakes were finally getting beaten back. Kushina landed on top of Kura's nine-tailed fox form. Kushina waited a moment to get her bearings straight and jumped off of the nine-tailed fox's head. As she landed, she cut off the head of a snake clone. Naruto jumped into the air with his tail swinging about. Something was different though. The boy had a Rasengan in each hand and there was a Rasengan in each tail tip. The only explanation was that he was holding them down with Senjutsu and he was maintaining them with the Kazemi. Naruto's target was a 50-foot-long boa constrictor. The snake didn't know what was coming. Naruto sent all 9 tails that had a Rasengan of normal blue color. The balls of chakra forced the snake's head down into the ground. As he descended, he forced more chakra into the 2 Rasengan in his hands and they grew to be a little over a meter in diameter. Naruto forced the 2 big ball Rasengans into the snake's head, disintegrating it at the molecular level. Naruto looked up to see the seal was still fabricating massive amounts of snakes. He sighed and looked to his mother. In the outside world, Sasuke had just left for some firewood, but hasn't returned and Sakura was getting worried. The forest was playing cruel tricks to her mind. She looked up to the sky to see that the sun was still up. She walked over to the sleeping Naruto. She was worried. The poor redhead had a ridiculous fever of over 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Sakura knelt down and placed a rag of water on his forehead to try and soothe the pain. She placed her hands on his chest and started channeling medical ninjutsu to calm his racing heartbeat. I hope you'll get better, Ni-san. Sakura sighed. She had no idea what Naruto was going through. She channeled more of her chakra to at least slow down his heart rate, but she ultimately stopped, knowing full well that it was of no use. She shut her eyes and started meditating. After the C-rank missions started flowing for their team, Sakura got slightly religious and started praying for their team to whatever deity she could think of. At this current moment she was praying to the great goddess Amaterasu for her guidance. Sakura. A voice hissed from outside of the tree roots. The girl reached into her kunai pouch and drew out a kunai and walked out with a cautious pace. She eyed her surroundings nervously. She looked to see Sasuke beaten up and bloodied. His arms were wrapped around Ino's shoulder and Shikamaru's shoulder. Behind them Choji was carrying a large bundle of firewood. Ino and Shikamaru laid the Uchiha against the tree roots and Sakura went straight to work on her wounded boyfriend. Naruto. Ino gasped. Is he okay? Ino dropped down to Naruto's side and placed a hand on his forehead, but quickly retracted it. She blew on her hands and sped through a quick jutsu. Suiten. Bankai no jutsu. Water started from the wet cloth, multiplied and a large bubble of water formed in Ino's hands. She used her chakra to continue to increase the amount of water and soon enough, she was able to wrap the bubble around Naruto's torso and legs. Everything but his head was inside of the water bubble. Raiden. Chiyu Habana no Jutsu, a spark of lightning spread throughout the water bubble. The electricity made his failing organs turn over and kick-start the body's normal systems. Behind them Shikamaru and Choji were making the fire spark to life. Then they heard it. 3 douchebag genin from the land of sound plopped out and looked at the 2 Konoha teams with a cocky look on their faces. One was hunched over and looked reminiscent to a mummy, another was wearing a helmet that framed his face, and the last was a kunoichi that looked somewhat scared. Choji and Shikamaru got into fighting stances and drew kunai. Ino left Naruto to heal, leaving Sakura as the team medic to finish healing up Sasuke, who happened to be the strongest combat shinobi of the six present. Team 10 got into formation with Ino behind Shikamaru and Choji to the side. Ino sped through a series of quick hand seals. Rantan. Reiza Sakasu. Lasers shot out from her hands and channeled towards her targets. The Oto shinobi were about to dodge the attacks, but Shikamaru's shadows came out and bound each one to their spot. The three Oto shinobi smiled. The attacks hit, but they phased through each genin. They were bunchins. Suddenly, Shikamaru was blown back by an unknown force and was drilled through a tree. Choji was about to retaliate, but he was slashed in the face by an invisible blade. Choji! Sasuke shouted. She pushed Sakura off and activated his Sharingan and punched forward, knocking the girl from the tree she was hiding behind. Sasuke was pissed. Not only were his closest friends beaten like nothing, but his hopefully future sister-in-law Ino was in danger, and not only would that put Sasuke in a pit of undying despair, but Naruto would most undoubtedly kill him. Sasuke had little chakra left and was borderline chakra exhaustion. The mummy boy came around and lodged his metal gauntlet in Sasuke's chest, sending him back into the tree that housed Naruto's sleeping form. Naruto! Wake up! Sasuke shouted out in pain. Naruto! Ino screamed. She jumped away when the helmet-wearing genin attacked. He had a large grin spread across his face. His hair was spiky and the strange thing about him was that he had a hole in the center of his palms. The boy focused chakra into the holes, and blades made from chakra formed and he started slashing for the beautiful blonde. Ino weaved in between each attack and sent a few strikes of taijutsu, each strike connecting without a hitch. Ino jumped back and lodged her fist into the genin's chin. She sped through some hand seals and used the last of her chakra before she completely depleted herself. She was able to save just enough to keep her afloat at least until help arrives. She finished the jutsu hand seals and slowly, a stream of water flowed from her mouth and built up in her hand like a sword. Suiten. Mizu Ken no Jutsu. The water sharpened and gained a thickness at where the blade was supposed to be. She shut her eyes and held the sword of water steady. Zaku came back around and sent a few blasts of chakra-enhanced wind blades. Ino jumped back after remembering what the blades could do after sparring with Naruto so much. But instead of the blades of wind aiming for kill hits, they were aimed for buttons and straps. Ino's eyes widened when she realized what he was aiming for. Soon enough Dosu, the mummy came out and hit her with a sound genjutsu. Ino was immobilized and Zaku shot off another blast cutting Ino's shirt clean off revealing her bra and bandages wrapping all around her torso. You bastards! Sakura sped through hand seals using up the last of her chakra. Doden. Doryuso no Jutsu. Spears of earth shot from around Sakura and shot straight for the perverted Oto shinobi. They easily dodged it since Sakura didn't have enough chakra to strengthen them enough. Dosu and Zaku walked up to Sakura and started wailing on her. Sasuke passed out not too long ago from his injuries and the fact that he had little to no chakra left. Ino was dazed from being nearly raped. Shikamaru and Choji were knocked out completely. In Naruto's mindscape, Udama Rasengan, Naruto jumped up into the air and destroyed the giant snake head that he was previously riding on. The snake exploded leaving Naruto to free fall towards the ground from nearly 300 feet in the air. As he started closing the distance between the ground and himself, an eagle summon came to the rescue and caught him just before he hit the ground. The eagle also took a few snakes with it to digest. All around, eagles and snakes were battling it out. Naruto focused his Kazemi and started sending tornadoes of lightning-enhanced water and wind towards the more larger snakes, like the nearly 1,000-foot-long snake that Kuro was struggling against. Throughout the fight Naruto had one question. How big is my mindscape? The eagle swooped down and dropped Naruto off next to his mom, who at this point, was drenched in snake entrails and blood, with no end in sight. Suddenly from the outside world there was a cry for help that sounded like Sasuke and Ino. Help. It was definitely Ino. Naruto felt his anger spike and his tail shot out and tore through a large group of mambas that had surrounded them. Naruto started channeling his Fox Senjutsu chakra to the point that it started overflowing. The chakra was so intense in heat that the snakes were starting to disintegrate. Naruto punched forward, sending a ball of wind that was infused with bright red flames. Naruto's eyes suddenly changed. The originally three-dot formation changed to that of a rhombus. The colors also changed. Instead of the light purple mixed with sapphire, his eyes lightened and it became light purple with a lighter shade of cerulean. He could feel his power rising with this new eye. He smiled brightly when he realized that he had unlocked the Tsutomu Mi. He clenched his fist and suddenly, the air was sucked from the snake clone's lungs. The water that flowed from within the snakes was evaporated and the electricity that flowed from their brain to their nerves was disrupted and disappeared. Go, Naruto! Kura screamed out to him as she shoved a Bijudama down the 1,000-foot-long snake's gullet. Me and Kushi-chan will hold them off for now. Alright, Naruto shouted out in rage. Out in the real world, Sakura's face was swollen and bloodied and she was starting to lose her shirt. Her wrists were broken and her left arm dislocated by the rapists. Ino was frozen in her place, her eyes devoid of color. Sakura continued to squirm and scream out for help, but none came. But then there was a massive chakra spike that seemed to scare everyone silent, and scared Ino from her daze. All heads turned to the tree to see it glowing with a malicious black and red color. Naruto walked from it covered in red tattoos that resembled flames. Naruto was awash in a bright red chakra flame that scared the two-sound ninja off of Sakura. Naruto kept his eyes closed. His tails were swishing about, tearing through the landscape, but it was a reserved and concentrated destruction though. Power flowed through Naruto, tainted or not. Naruto liked the power, but he had more pressing matters to attend to. Sakura, Ino, Naruto said. He looked at them with his bangs covering his eyes from view. Did those pricks do this to you too? Naruto asked with a deep and demonic baritone to his voice. Ino ran to Sakura and nodded her head and went straight away to heal her best friend's face. Naruto turned his attention to the two in front of him. They both had cocky grins on their faces, but they weren't willing to attack first. Feel the wrath of the Tsutomu. Naruto clenched his fists, sucking the air from their lungs. The two dropped to their knees, but Naruto forced the water in their system to keep them standing. Naruto blew them back with a blast of wind and pinned them onto the tree behind. My eyes can see the future. You wanna know what yours is? The two were coughing and gasping for air. Painful, excruciatingly painful deaths. Naruto sent his tails off and started rapidly stabbing Dosu's body, each tail tearing and burning his flesh with every stab. When Dosu died, he forced the healing spark technique into his body, bringing him back to life, so Naruto could further desecrate his body. Dosu screamed and screamed. He screamed like he never had in his life. Naruto ended Dosu's life after he begged for 10 minutes straight. Both Team 7 and Team 10 were awake and watching the entire scene unfold. Dosu's head was ripped off of his body by one of Naruto's tails and stabbed through one of Sakura's earth spears embedded into the ground. Naruto summoned up a few fox summons to dispose of the genin's body. The boys looked at Naruto with both fear and respect. Once the foxes finished ingesting the remains of Dosu, Naruto turned to face Zaku. You beat and tried to rape my sister. That's a no, no. Then you tried to rape my girlfriend. You are a dead man. Zaku started crying and looked at Naruto with complete unrestrained fear. Naruto sent off large blades of wind that sliced through Zaku's body, but didn't go all the way through. Zaku coughed out blood and looked around and nodded to his female team member hiding out. She charged for Naruto with a kunai in hand, but Naruto's tail shot out and tore through her chest, impaling her heart, killing her instantly. One of his other tails drew a kunai and sliced the kunoichi's head off and stabbed her head in a pike next to Dosu's head. The foxes charged out and started mauling through Kin's dead body. The smell of blood became overly apparent, and Naruto seemed to be loving it. Naruto turned around, with Zaku still stuck to the large tree, and spotted a large spike sticking up from the ground, from when Sakura first charged up the Earth Spear Jutsu. Naruto smiled to himself and his tail shot out to Zaku and tore his limbs off, leaving him as a torso. Every genin present screamed out when Naruto did it so suddenly. Zaku didn't even get to scream. Naruto dropped Zaku's body in front of Sakura and Ino. Naruto gave the two healers a look and they understood immediately. Ino and Sakura started healing his stumps, and stopped the blood flow. The boys of the group were sick from the sight of so much blood, but Ino and Sakura felt no remorse. Naruto lifted the body up by his tails and stuck his body down through the large spike of earth. The tip tearing through his groin and tearing through and stopping at his mid-abdomen, just where the bottom of the stomach resided in his gut. Blood poured down the spike, leaving Zaku to stare aimlessly at the sky and contemplate his life. He trailed his eyes down to see the foxes feasting on his limbs. This was a terrible way to die. Naruto looked at his friends and instantly the malicious and tainted chakra was sucked back into his body. Naruto gripped his head as the chakra started disappearing. The tattoos resided to the seal on his neck, and his dark eyes returned back to their normal dark purple and cerulean. Ino caught his body just before he hit the ground. She and Sasuke picked him up and led him back into the shelter made from roots of the tree. "Sleep tight, Naruto-kun." Ino kissed his cheek and laid down next to him as tears started forming in her eyes. She couldn't help it. Naruto had just murdered 3 genin. Even though it was with good reason, it was still murder. "Please be safe." Naruto stabbed upwards and shoved his kunai into the snake's jaw, killing it instantly. He tore the blade from the head and focused wind chakra into his kunai, extending the blade to make it into a sword. He pulled out another and did the exact same. He focused wind in every step he took, giving him extra speed. His thousands of clones still battling it out with his mom and Kurane. He slashed in a wide arc, cutting off the heads of 15 rattlesnakes. He formed another battalion of clones and sent them off to go snake hunting with eagles at their side. Kushina was spitting out fire jutsu after fire jutsu. The snakes that attacked were incinerated whenever they got too close. She lost her sword a few days ago and she was relying on her jutsu and taijutsu to beat the snakes back into the seal. The good thing about it was that all of the snakes were manageable 5 to 20 foot long snakes. She drew a few 3-prong kunai and hurled them out in wide arcs and mixed shuriken into each attack. Kura shrunk back to her human form and pulled out a special kunai that Naruto had seen before, but the poor redhead couldn't remember where. Kura hurled the kunai and the knife embedded in a snake clone's face, but the knife exploded and multiplied into nearly 300 similar kunai. Kura smiled and disappeared in a bright blood-red flash and started tearing through everything in a 20-yard by 20-yard area. Naruto looked over at Kura and saw nothing but red flashes going off everywhere. He was scared but thought back to when he first asked Kura to teach him the Harishin. She flatly told him no and said that he was too young, and his body hadn't matured enough to withstand the pressure of going at near light speed. She also said that Naruto wasn't cool enough yet. As if being cool is something to use to judge potential students. They 3 were making great progress so far and the reaches of Orochimaru's cursed seal was being removed and as of now, the snakes were no longer on the offensive. After fighting for a near month straight in his mindscape, and only being asleep for a night in the real world, Naruto gained large amounts of combat experience. Already he had slaughtered over 1 million snakes when he let his anger get the best of him. With the Tsutomu, he was able to turn the tide almost instantly. He shot 4th A ranked ninjutsu for nearly 3 days straight in the mindscape, tearing up the area and killing everything in his path. Kura shot Bijudama after Bijudama and Kushina sent off her low-leveled techniques and leveled nearly half the battlefield. At first when the invasion first started, they were at the cage which was the finish line. If the snakes were able to get to the gate, who knows what they would do to the cage and the seal. But that was nearly a month ago in the mindscape. They at first could only barely see the large cursed seal floating against the wall on the far side of the corridor. The reason that Kura could fight without being restrained by the cage was the fact that the seal was changed into a collar. Everything about the mindscape changed. They were fighting in a large short-grassed plain with a jungle in the distance and large mountain with the cursed seal of heaven drawn across the mountainside. It was still barely visible and the three had over 200 miles to go. Each mile was infested with snakes and more snakes, since the cursed seal happened to be fabricating them in vast multitudes. They poured from the Tomo design of the seals and oozed out into the jungle below the mountainside. At first they thought it wouldn't be possible, but Kushina got smart and summoned her eagles, which happened to have a taste for snakes. So now, they could see the cursed seal radiating tainted energy and its fabrication of snakes had slowed down. The forest was leveled completely and the three started channeling their most powerful long-ranged attacks to override the cursed seal. Kura formed a Bijudama again and Kushina formed hand seals and Naruto's Tsutomu was spinning wildly. Kura shot the ball of mass destruction, Kushina sent a tsunami of fire, and Naruto shot off the largest storm he had ever concocted with the Tsutomu, causing his eyes to dry and start bleeding. The storm mixed with the tsunami of fire and turned the once powerful storm into an apocalyptic inferno. The firestorm collided with the cursed seal, instantly weakening its protective barrier. The Bijudama followed through and smashed into the cursed seal's central tomo, severing all connection with Orochimaru and snakes in general, leaving Naruto with all of the power it has. The eagles landed in front of Kushina and perched in tree branches and other types of perches. The hundreds of thousands of Naruto clones collapsed finally and dispelled in mass numbers, overflowing Naruto's mind with all of their memories and kills. Naruto fell flat on his butt and instantly thought of some shade and a nice pretty beach to go to. Almost immediately, the scenery changed and a large glisteningly beautiful beach formed with a volcano right behind them and an extremely large beach house. There was another jungle that formed, this time thick enough to become the home for the eagle summons. Ka-chan. Just in case so you don't feel lonely, and if the snakes do return, you'll always have eagles to rely on. Naruto smiled, but then came to a thought. What happens to the eagles born here in my mindscape? Are they a figment of my imagination or are they creations within my mind from another source, which happens to be stuck in my mind, thus still a figment of my imagination? Shut up, Naruto-kun. You're confusing. Now go wake up. We've been fighting for so long. Kushina left Naruto and Kura followed suit. Eagles were flying about and building nests within the jungle biome. Naruto continued to lay on the sandy beach without a care. The wind felt nice and the warm beach water felt like heaven to his toes. As much as Naruto liked the almost limitless power that he was gifted, Naruto didn't want tainted power. He wanted that cursed seal gone. Out in the real world, nighttime had just fallen and the daybreak was calm and crisp. The team's male members had just returned after a successful hunt and were currently cooking the rabbits and other animals that they caught in their traps. Sakura and Ino were still tending to the fever-ridden Naruto. He was still out, but at least his temperature lowered to only 110 degrees. His cursed seal also couldn't stop changing, to the point that instead of it being black, the seal turned blood red, and then the entire seal dyed a dark purple much like his eyes were. Sakura had regained her chakra overnight and formed a large mud wall that surrounded them, much like a fortress. For about 20 yards in every direction, there were traps and trip wires. All over the place, they made sure to leave no area unprotected. Explosive tags they found in Naruto's pouch were placed on trees and underground. They even attached them to kunai in the traps just in case they were tripped. Ino walked away from Naruto and sighed at his condition. They are only supposed to be in the forest for only 5 days, 1 day already passed. Even though it was highly productive at the start, Team 7 was knocked down many pegs and was down a scroll. Man, Naruto's voice sounded from beneath the tree. Everyone shot up and sped for Naruto. Hey, what happened? You You did that. Everyone pointed at the savagely mutilated bodies of the three sound genin. You also kinda left those three behind. There were three five-tailed kitsune summons with purple and black fur. They weren't that large either, probably the size of a normal fox. They were sitting at his feet with happy expressions. Naruto tilted his head slightly in surprise and wondered why they were still here. Naruto sat up, expecting excruciating pain, but he felt nothing. Naruto shrugged and stood up and stretched. One of the foxes jumped at Naruto's side and started licking his hand. Everyone looked in confusion. The fox was, in reality, just an overgrown kit. The fox soon looked to the other two and they joined in. They liked the smell of Naruto apparently. The tails and the ears were also a dead giveaway. Naruto thought about it for a bit and dropped down in a meditative stance and channeled his nature chakra. He sensed the foxes doing the same. In Naruto's mindscape, the blonde opened his eyes to see his mother sitting in a beach chair and Kura playing with some of the foxes created in the jungle, which was weird, since foxes don't live in the jungle. Monkeys and tropical birds were going about through the beach and trees, leaving Kura with a lot to do. Naruto smiled at how peaceful it was and headed over to Kura with the three fox kits at his side. Kura-ne, I need you for something. Naruto called out. Suddenly Kura popped her beautiful face out of the water. Naruto face faulted when Kura appeared to have a live fish in her mouth, while still in her human form. Kura apparently just doesn't give a. She hopped over to Naruto and smiled at him before spitting the fish from her mouth. Almost immediately, the foxes came out and started tearing through the fish. What is it, Naru-kun? Kura asked. She looked down and instantly got the message. The foxes looked at Kura with a weird expression and smiled like idiots. They channeled some senjutsu chakra and sat upright. Their bodies soon changed to reveal three girls just as old as Naruto with long flowing black and red hair with purple, regent kimonos. The katanas at their sides had elaborate designs of foxes swiveling around the scabbard and the handle was the open mouth of a fox. The cool thing about the katanas was that they were chokuto styled. In other words, straight-bladed katanas. Naruto blushed brightly when he realized that the three were extremely beautiful girls with wonderful hair. They turned to face Naruto and they each had whisker marks like he did. Their fox ears were purple and their 5 fox tails were purple with the tips black. To Naruto's surprise, their chests were actually well developed, but then again, they were fox summons that have probably been alive for centuries. Naruto was forced from his reverie and looked at the three kitsune. Their eyes were the same color, blood red. Naruto chuckled slightly and looked to Kura for an explanation. Well, Naruto-kun. Look at the kitsune that we have here. Kura smiled. The three girls turned and bowed to Kura. Yoko, the defender. The tallest on with the curly hair stood up and smiled. Seiko, the soldier. The middle with short hair looked up and nodded her head. And last, Fujika, the assassin. The last and shortest with the ponytail like Ino looked up and smiled brightly. Who are they, Kura-ne? Naruto asked. Naruto-sama. Yoko turned around and gave him a smile. We are here to protect you and